Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast. Today, I have joining with me is Anitha Haripersad, and mate, can I just say she is a wealth of knowledge. Now, I'm reading this because I don't want to get it wrong, but she holds a master's in inclusive education. She has a postgraduate in working with children with autism and a diploma in educational leadership and learning. Anitha is also a certified Lego-based play trainer and facilitator. So, Anitha, welcome. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Natalie, how are you? It's so
Yeah.
good to be on this podcast with you. Really excited.
Thank you so much for coming on. So, I wanted to chat to you. Obviously, you do a lot of work with autistic kids when it comes to Lego and Lego therapy. You talk a lot about how all behaviour is communication. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So, very often, especially when you're working with kids with ASD, you're working with a neurodivergent community. Uh, and this is my experience from being in a classroom. And I started in a classroom in 2000 in New Zealand at a little school in in Auckland. And what I noticed was when you see those flares and those eruptions, that's when you kind of drawn to that. And it really early in my practice, I started to wonder: is what we actually are looking for? Is this what uh, is this when we give that attention that the child is looking for? And that was part of my wonderings. And it was in that when I started studying. Um, Working with kids with autism in a classroom, that was my focus uh, around the communication and the behavior. So, what was the behavior communicating? And what I realized is that we notice those behaviors, but there are also when a kid is really settled, when they are calm, they're regulated. And so behavior itself is an expression of emotion. I'm calm, I'm relaxed. Or when you see those little flares, it's usually the kid is saying, I need help. And often they don't have the language to be able to express that. And we all see it in maladapted forms. And usually behavior has four functions. I want your attention. I want something tangible. Or in terms of their own body and their interoception, how they understand their body, something just doesn't feel right, but they don't have the words to explain that. And in a classroom, you often find you give a piece of work and it may be too hard, it may be too challenging. They may not want to work in that group. And of course, they want to avoid that behavior, avoid the task or escape the task. And that's when you see the flare ups. So that's where I guess it was really those early wonderings of what is this behavior communicating to us? And it is that expression of emotions.
I love that so much because I've seen it so many times with so many kids, whether I've been like a volunteer in my kids' classrooms or, just watching kids and just really having to see what's going on. And that non-verbal behavior is so important. And because as parents, as teachers, as whoever, we're so busy that sometimes we forget to watch those non-verbal cues. We forget to really pay attention to them. But if we just stop for a second, and I know we're all busy, I get it. I am busy. I know what it's like. But if we could just take a moment just to pause and really look at what they're trying to say, my goodness, I think that we would really help our children so much more.
And it
Um,
is, yeah, it is in those subtle nuances. I remember when I then left the autism um, classrooms for a while, and I worked in a mainstream school, and the kids used to say, "But how did you know that?" Because you actually learn that for every you are always scanning, and it is so important. It becomes part of what you do, who you are. And especially as a parent, it's so important every now and again just to scan, just to notice, because it is in noticing that you would know the different shifts.
oh, absolutely. And you also have to train your brain to sort of look for those little nuances. And it's hard because it's not something that you just wake up and be like, oh, I know what I'm looking for. You really are just looking and really paying attention and studying what the child is saying. So what are the 4 behaviours that indicate anxiety?
Okay, and this came from um, in in 2015 to 2020, I had the opportunity to work in a psychiatric ward as an education consultant, mainly with adolescents that came in because of anxiety, because of depression, but I generally worked with the population that had autism. So it was supporting kids with autism that had acute mental health issues. But part of that was looking at how I then addressed that with the school. What was happening in school? Because school was actually quite a significant factor in what was going on in these young people's lives. And often the four factors or the 4 indicators of anxiety. Um, Number one, if there's anger, there's avoidance, there's that constant worry or overthinking, and sometimes it is just about there's that lack of focus, the lack of attention. But before we speak about that, it was then that I was had started my research, and I was looking at anxiety because after depression, anxiety is the next fact. I guess it's the next disorder in terms of mental health that, and this is all people with autism struggle with. Okay, so and anxiety with ASD, it becomes a comorbid presentation, and it contributes 50% of a person's, I guess, disposition or their behavior. Now, 50% is a significant amount. And so often we see that avoidant behavior, we see anger. And that's when you get that physical aggression, you may get that verbal aggression, it's property damage, it's all those really explosive behaviors that you're seeing when you're working with, especially with kids with acute behaviors or acute mental health presentations. But what I realized and what the research was saying is that anxiety and in anybody with autism is so prevalent because they have their sense of self-worth is, I guess, in terms of viewing themselves with others around them, there's always that sense of that uncertainty. So it is about finding their place. And when you can't really find your place, you're not quite comfortable, things don't make meaning. It may just be too busy. You start to adapt strategies that you can actually escape from the place. But what is underpinning that is that anxiety. I don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel like I can do this. I'm afraid of, if people have social anxiety, if a kid has social anxiety, I'm afraid of others around me. So there are so many factors that that create that anxiety because we live in a world where the, wherever we look, there's just so much of stress. That's our life, and we learn to adapt. But especially when you're working with kids with ASD or just any individual that's neurodivergent and having a mental health, I guess, playing into it, that anxiety just really slips in so easily. But what you end up seeing is a behavior. You end up seeing the flares, the explosions, the eruptions, like that volcano. But what's underpinning it? And that's what most of my work is. We're looking at what's underneath that behavior, what's underpinning it. And it's usually an anxiety about something. So yeah, so often it's that I can't express myself because I don't have the words. So if I act out, if it's if there's physical aggression, verbal aggression, property damage, that's what you end up seeing if someone's really angry. If someone wants to avoid something or escape that, they would find a way to either distract you or to become really isolated or to do something that they know they're going to get themselves out of that situation. But it's not just avoidance. It's that I can't do this. I feel often in a classroom, it feels like I'm not good enough. Ah, and yeah,
I love that so much because I see it so much. But
yes,
one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is for the kids that are minimally speaking or non speaking, that don't necessarily have those eruptions or those flares, do you think that they is that still presenting as anxiety, or do you think that that's not anxiety at all, and that someone who doesn't have a flare, who doesn't have an eruption, that they
yeah.
probably don't have anxiety at all, or am I getting it wrong?
Okay, so that's really interesting, Natalie. Yesterday, I worked with somebody who, when I first got the referral, so I work as a behavior therapist with kids with NDIS that are funded in the improved relationships. And I got a referral, it was early in the year, where there was this 9-year-old who had become really withdrawn. He became, he's, so part of the diagnosis was he was a select mute. So he'd only speak at home to certain people and two friends at school. And he became really withdrawn. And so uh, the teachers could not get anything out of him. He was just refusing to do anything. And so when I got the referral, I decided I won't meet him at school because school is a stressful environment. So I said to his mom, where's the best place to meet him? So I did. I met him on a Saturday. And the first thing I did was I actually took a Lego block because I thought he's a 9-year-old. He may like, I knew that his dad loved trucks. They had trucks. So I took a construction of a truck and he was excited. And he said, "Hi, can you come and play with me in my room?" And I thought, oh, wow, you a select mute is someone that's feeling really anxious. They don't really want to talk about anything because, number one, they can't express it, but number two, they're not feeling safe. But I thought to myself, I'm a stranger. He hasn't met me, but he's already seen this thing that he loves, this Lego, and he was able to chat with me. We built the construction, we built the truck, and coming back to your point, that kids that don't probably are nonverbal, kids that have limited language, it's often that they don't have the language to express that anxiety. And it's about just building that rapport, getting to know them. Really, what does quality engagement look like so you can actually know what is really bothering them. And slowly he's able to tell me all sorts of things now. So,
That's wonderful. That is so
yeah,
wonderful because very often, or more often than not, either non-speaking or minimally speaking kids, they sort of get pushed under the rug, and those behaviors or those lack of behaviors don't really get addressed,
yeah.
and so they sort of fall through the cracks. So I'm glad that I asked you that question. How would you use your child's own interest to motivate them in terms of relationship building or even just like social learning? Like, how does that look when it comes to Lego and in an environment that feels safe to them?
You know, especially when you're working with a kid with ASD, their special interest is it's as if it's their superpower. Yeah. And I see that as their superpower. And the most important thing is you become part of their world because they are not going to get up one day and say, I would like to make friends with X, Y, and Z, and this is what I'm going to do. But what you can do as the adult, or even the adult in an environment where there are other kids and you want to teach these pro-social skills, you want to actually look at what quality engagement looks like. It is about uh, using that special, and I use the special interest as my leverage, because as soon as you got that, you've got in, uh, because you've entered their world, and the most important thing is it's about you entering their world, making meaning of them in their world, becoming part of that world. Now, if you use an analogy, Natalie, of a dance, right? you imagine you said, okay, you're gonna pair up and you're gonna dance with this person. For the first time, you ask, what is this dance? Who is this person? There isn't any coordination as such. It's really clumsy. You may not even look at each other. And that's what happens when you give a kid a task or something to play with. If they're not interested in it, you're not going to get that quality engagement. But what you truly want is is that joint it's a joint attention, that joint engagement. And so leveraging that special interest, it's their special interest. They know all about it. They talk about it. They would uh, uh, teach you things, and you become curious about it. So when I first started with behaviors, being a behavior therapist, I was called to the school where a kid was suspended for the ninth time. And if he was suspended the 10th time, he was going to be expelled. So it was a crisis. And all I knew he was a 6 year old, and I thought a 6 year old should never be expelled from a school. Something has to be happening here. I also knew that he liked dinosaurs. And so when I first went to see him, he was in the classroom alone. The entire class with the teacher was outside because he was smashing up the classroom. And so I had taken a dinosaur with me. Uh, and I knocked at the door and I introduced myself and I said, "Hey, Jack, this is who I am. I heard you like dinosaurs." So he stopped kicking the desk that he was kicking. And he said, "How do you know?" And I said, "Oh, as I was walking past your desk, I saw a dinosaur there, but I also have a Lego dinosaur." So we started. He calmed down. He wanted to build a dinosaur, but it was through months and months of work. It wasn't just about a kid that was misbehaving. It was a kid that had a history of trauma. It was a kid who really struggled to be in a classroom environment. But it was through that special interest of the dinosaur that he told me so much about dinosaurs, and we built all different types of dinosaurs through Lego, that we were able to actually get to what it means to sit down, to start a task, to share equipment, to be able to actually ask for help. And that was the thing that he couldn't do. So I guess coming back to your question of how you leverage that to learn pro-social skills, uh, it's leveraging that special interest and allowing that you become part of that world and become curious about it.
Can I just say, Anitha, that story has touched my heart so much because I have seen this time and time
Yeah,
again. And, as much as we love teachers, we love them because they are so selfless, but they don't have the training to be
yeah,
able to deal with a child who is in trauma.
yeah.
And rightly so. They don't get obviously educated around trauma, and I totally get that. But I'm so grateful for you that you're able to come in and really take something, a situation that was so diabolical, and
Yeah.
change it and make it so beautiful. And I'm sure that this child, that Jack, is feeling so much safer with you and feels that connection with you, because as parents, sometimes we don't know the right way to go about it, right? We haven't had the training, we haven't had that upskill in how knowing where to go. So, oh my gosh, thank you so much for being able to share that story.
And I think the most important thing is about being curious about what they know, about their special interest, because that's when you're building rapport, you're building quality engagement, you're building that eye contact, and that they want to, uh, that trust that I've got this adult with me who maybe comes and sees me once a week, once in 2 weeks, or you as a parent, you may have time to spend time with your kid every now and again. But it is about saying that my mom or my teacher or this person really gets me. And that's how you build that relationship.
One thing I'm curious about, I remember this was back when my angel boy was quite young, and I remember the pediatrician saying, "I just need you to play with him. I just need you to like play it." And I said to the pediatrician, I have forgotten how to play. I don't know what that means anymore.
Mm.
And I really had lost the art of play. And so, do you find that that's the case with a lot of parents? Like this idea of play, like what is that? Like, I don't, and it was a completely different world because I was a young girl. Like I know how to play with Barbies and color in, but I don't know what it feels like to grow up as a little boy. And so what does that look like? How do we play? How do we engage? Do you find that that's a common question you get from parents?
Not a common question, but I see it because parents are so busy. And it's and you know I often think and part of my role is about sharing the strategies, and it's about making time to just spend that, whether it's half an hour, whether it's 15 minutes, but it's just making time to connect, because through play what you are actually getting is you're learning to co-regulate, because often parents are actually anxious and nervous. What am I going to be doing here? And it's about tapping into your own feelings and saying, okay, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? But what can we do together? So it may not be playing with just toys. It could be cooking. It could be something that the kid really loves. Uh, but again, Natalie, it is about tuning into yourself first, asking yourself what, in terms of this relationship, because it finally comes down to the relationship. We don't want to be present because there's an eruption, or because we need to do something together. It is that play is such a powerful tool, because what you're building is that sense of trust, a sense of flow, and it is in play that we can make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes.
Yes, yes. Can we repeat that so many times? As parents, I think that we think that we have to get it right all the time. No, our children need us to make mistakes so that they know that it's okay to make mistakes. If we were perfect all the time, could you imagine the pressure that these kids are feeling, like they can't make a mistake, that that is not an option? And that's where I feel like, as parents, especially as mums, put your oxygen mask on first. Make sure that you are dialed into you first
Yeah,
before you support your child. Because, like you said, and I often say this to clients and to colleagues, that whatever you're feeling, if that's anxiety, if that's depression, if that's overwhelm, these kids, these beautiful autistic souls, they are picking up on that energy. Like whether they
absolutely.
are verbal or not, they are picking up on what is going on. And so if you are really stressed out, then the likelihood rather of them having an eruption or them having one of those moments where they're not regulated is going to be pretty common, right? We see it
Yeah.
all the time. So I really love that. Um, can I just ask you the benefits around transformative Lego play? Like how, because obviously a lot of your work is done around Lego and there's so many transformations as you've shared. Can you just tell us a little bit more about it?
It's so funny. It started as incidental. It was something that I did not plan, because I grew up in South Africa, and being a girl, my job was to. I had a small little iron, so when my mother was ironing, that's what I did. And I had a little vacuum cleaner and all those things. And I didn't really know what it was to play, because I was just doing things alongside my mom and alongside my sister. Um, and it was, I guess, as a teacher, you notice kids building blocks, or uh, there's all different types of construction. But what I realized is Lego is a universal language. It's There is no first of all, it is so colorful. It draws it draws your attention. But most importantly, there's that sense of creativity about it. There's a sense of innovation. There's a definite beginning and a definite end. And especially with kids with ASD, anybody, we all like structure. We like routine. We like to see that you are building and scaffolding on things. And I guess in terms of the benefits of Lego, what it actually does is there's that sense of, as you're building together, you are sharing that space, you're sharing equipment, you are making eye contact. So you are, in terms of that joint attention, that's starting to happen. But most importantly, often the first thing I do is just check in and saying, how are you feeling? So you're looking at emotional regulation. And uh, it's not just building on, not just checking on to say I'm feeling happy or I'm feeling calm, but through that, when we're working with characters, how could this character be feeling? So you including, there's that emotional literacy happening. So you're building on feelings. Um, it gives you, when you're playing with Lego, it gives you that sense of belonging. This belongs to me. We're playing with it together. And I very often say to the kids that I work with, when that construction is finished, this is yours. Because you need to see this as not just as a symbol of something that I achieved. So it has that sense of achievement about it. And when you're working with more than one kid, what you are actually wanting to do is, besides sharing space, turn taking, those pro social skills, you are actually, they're learning to pick up on those subtle nuances. What does a friendship look like? What are some of the things that I can say or I can't say? What's appropriate? What's inappropriate? And so all that's happening in terms of relationships, but in terms of that executive functioning that we talk about. There's that power of focus. There's concentration. I can follow a visual schedule as such. I can start a task. I can complete a task. Uh, it's about knowing that I can ask for help. And it's all, there's so much of cognition that goes into it, and it's developing those cognitive skills that often in a classroom or in a play group, that's what we're wanting to do, but we don't really achieve it. But Lego is so, it's so powerful in that it allows for all those things to happen, and it's happening simultaneously in an environment, whether you're sitting at a desk, you're sitting on the floor, it doesn't matter. But what matters is that you've got that joint attention and that we are doing this together.
I love that so much. And it is. And it's also creativity. It's about
Yeah,
creating something of what's inside of you,
yeah,
right? And it is so true around, I think we get lost in not being able to create, first of all. And then the second thing is, I love seeing what kids create because I love seeing what's going on in their brain, right?
yep,
What are they trying to tell us through the Lego? Like, what are you trying to create? Because sometimes, let's say if they're not a Lego interest. I remember my kids went to a Lego session just at the local library, and it was so interesting to watch how everyone made something different, and how, like, my daughter was always making like this magical house, this like beautiful magical house with all these different levels, and there was
yep,
all these fun things to do, and I just loved that, right? And my son was making things like mazes and like what he'd seen through his own journey, whether it's been on, on the iPad or through the TV. Like, that was his big thing. So I love that. I wanted to ask you, before we go on to the rapid fire questions, first of all, where can people find you, and how do they connect with you, really?
okay. So I guess my website is it's a fantastic tool as such. So it's called breakthroughlearning.au, and on that, apart from information on behavior, on ASD, it's also got a page that is that's there just for Lego, and it tells you what, in terms of what we're really trying to achieve. It is about that getting the person who's learning it. It's about that sense of belonging, feeling connected, that motivation, and a sense of achievement. So it's all really, the page explains it really well. um,
Um,
yeah, and I guess I'm on Facebook, and happy to share that with you a little later, Natalie. And so, if you put that on, I guess, as part of the podcast, that would be great. I
Yeah,
suppose.
so I will link the
Yeah.
website, and I'll also link the Facebook group that is, or the Facebook page that you need to go through to. One thing I wanted to ask you is, from what I understand, you have a special freebie to offer the community of listeners. Can you please share on that?
Yeah, and look, it's if there's anybody, or the first 5 people actually that contact me, um, regarding the Lego transformative play. You'd have a free session. The session is about an hour. Sometimes kids want to go longer than an hour, and that's fine. It is about them. It's about their engagement. It's about building something, and it's about having the joy of that completion. So for the first 5 people that contact me uh, on through my website or on Facebook. Happy to speak with you, and you are most welcome to bring your kids in, and we'll have this amazing session where where as a parent you are able to sit in and watch how Lego therapy actually motivates and engages your kids, because there's in the therapy itself, you have different roles. And with kids with ASD, when they like something, that's what they want to do. They want to build it. But how do we share? So there's the engineer, there's the supplier, there's the builder. So we take turns using different roles, and it allows them. That's part of the creativity, but it also allows them to know that you can do different things, and you're also part of a build, a group, a friendship. So it's teaching those skills.
I love that. And so, just so that I can get this right, so do you go out to schools and you do the therapy at the school, or are you doing it like on site at your office? Like, how do parents access that?
Yes, so kids, so at school, it's generally the kids that are referred to me for behavior support, and that's for improved relationships. Um, when the behavior is an issue at school, it's best to then address it at school, because then you're working with not just the kid, I guess the kids in the classroom that may or may not be I guess, at the end of this behavior that's happening, but also working with the teacher. So we're putting strategies into place at school. Uh, and then I also have sessions at home. So I have a therapeutic space, and it is just set up for Lego. It's just got a lovely space, and that you can do that. And the most interesting things is I work with kids that often have um, have had a history of trauma, and we're looking at um, so how do it's really difficult to say to a kid, so tell me what happened, because there's so much that happens there. There's maybe shame, there may be guilt, there's fear, there's anxiety. All those factors are playing out. But through Lego, we just talk, we're building. So tell me about that. And if if there's something wrong with that, what can we do? Give me an example of that. And that's when they start to share all this information. And just last year, I was able to complete 4 mandatory reportings on neglect, sexual abuse, and all these conversations came through. I trust you, we play together, and these are the conversations, because I often notice, I say, oh, today you're just not looking, what's going on? And slowly your kids are able to open up.
Why are you not in every single school, Anitha? You should be in every single school. What's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to rapid fire questions. Okay, so the first one is, what is one myth about children's behavior that you wish more people would unlearn?
You know, people see the flares, they see the eruptions, but the myth is that they want attention, or they want something tangible, or I don't want to do this. But the that every emotion or every behavior is valid, and the most important thing is, the myth is, a kid is saying, I need help, and they don't have the language to ask for help, or they may not have the confidence to ask for help. So it's about safety. When you see that behavior, you ask yourself, what does this kid need? So they safe, you are safe, everybody else around them is safe, because they need help. And often the stretch may be too much, the demand may be too much, or you are not providing adequate support. That is why you see that behavior happening.
Yeah, definitely. If you could only use one tool or strategy in your sessions, what would it be and why?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Sorry, if you could use only one tool or strategy in your sessions, what would it be and why?
Oh my God, the strategy is the Lego, because it allows for so many things, but most importantly, uh, it's not just Lego. I say to the kids, so what do you really like? And they'd say to me, oh, I'd like monster trucks. So I'd say, if I buy a Lego monster truck, can we build this together? So of course, they've already told me it's a monster truck, but we're going to do something together. And that, as a strategy, you are building on so many things. It's that joint attention, it is trust, it's building a relationship, it's quality engagement, it's saying to them that checking in on what the emotions are. I noticed that you were looking a little worried, so I just use words that I know that they may not be using, to just allow that emotional literacy to start happening. So those, yeah, it's a tool, it's a strategy, it's my go-to, but has allowed me to have phenomenal success, and kids through that are able to cope with so many different experiences, because I work with generally kids that have trauma and ASD. So we're looking at that high-end kids, that where you see those real eruptions happening.
I can see that you're so passionate about it. When I asked you that question, your whole face just lit up. I just love it. I love it. Lego-based play. In one sentence, what makes it so powerful for connection and growth? And I think we sort of touched on that in your
Yeah.
previous. So it is that connection, it's that eye contact. I'm going to skip that one. Is there a book that you would recommend in terms of, like, obviously parents are always looking to upskill themselves, wanting to know a little bit more. Is there a book that you would recommend?
I have a book right on my table, and it's a fantastic book. It's called 10 Things, 10 Things I wish, 10 Things I Wish You Knew About Your Child's Mental Health.
Yes, I know this one.
Yeah, it's by Billy Garvey, Dr. Billy Garvey. He's a doctor in Melbourne at the Behaviour Clinic, and he's also a pediatrician. Um, Chapter 2 in there, they talk about behaviors, but lots of it are related to kids with ASD, neurodivergent kids, kids with trauma. And it was just yesterday, I bought somebody a gift, and I thought, you know what, this is something that I think you'd really you'd value, and you'd find that you could use as strategies from there. So this. There are so many amazing books, but I also have the audio book, which is so funny. And when I know that I'm going to see a certain client or certain kid, I put it on a certain chapter, so it just allows me to reframe what I'm going to say, because there's real gems in there, real nuggets of gold.
I'll make sure that I link that to the show notes. What's one small shift a parent or an educator can make today that can have a big impact on a child's behaviour?
The most important thing is that ability to co-regulate. So when you see that behavior, it's asking yourself, okay, I'm seeing it. What is it doing to me? First of all, am I going to be reactive, and I'm going to, be the dominant person, or am I going to be this person that's trying to actually understand what's happening here? And it is in that co-regulation, you're first checking in with yourself. And when you check in with yourself, then you know, okay, I I'm I think I'm ready to actually I guess engage with this kid, because the most important thing is it's about that safety. It's about providing that care, and for a child to know that there is an adult there that that that's got their back.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Safety will always come down as the number one,
Yeah.
right? If we don't feel safe, how can we possibly learn? How can we function? How can we show up? How do we sleep and concentrate and focus and all of those sort of things if you don't feel like you have safety? Okay. And the lucky last question is, you've worked in the field for, as we know, nearly 30 years.
Yeah.
What keeps your passion alive for supporting all of these beautiful, amazing souls?
Each person comes with something different, something unique. There's that uniqueness about uh, each individual that I work with, and it's that sense of curiosity. Because even when I worked in a classroom, you may have 20 or 30 kids, but they're all different. And it is about just having that openness. And that, because from every person I work with, I do more learning than therapy. Because it's so important to go in being open, and it's about how we're going to do this together, but what do we want to achieve here? And I don't have all the answers, but together we're going to find it.
Anitha, I am so grateful for you. I am so grateful for the work that you are doing and the work that you will continue to do, because it is so, so needed in the autistic community. So thank you so much for coming on the Everyday Heroes podcast to share all of your knowledge.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Natalie. It's really amazing. And yeah, you are doing an amazing job sharing all sorts of different ideas, strategies with parents, because we work in a community that we need those. Those little gems are what makes that difference.
Oh,
Yeah.
it sure does. So yes, so thank you again for coming on, and I will chat to you soon.
Thank you, Natalie, and speak soon. Bye.
Absolutely.
Bye for now.